Welcome to an episode of Find Your Voice, a movement led by yours truly, Aren, a guy who has overcome crippling anxiety, adversity, and difficulty like so many of you in life, whose main goal now is to help you combat your excuses, take control of your life, write your own story, and most importantly, find your voice. So now, without further ado, I welcome the host of the show himself, Mr. Aren.
What's going on, people? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Find Your Voice. My name is Aren, and as always, I am the host of the show. So I'm delighted to be able to bring to you today Stephanie Taylor onto the show. Now, Stephanie operates in the same field as myself, the property sector, but more importantly, what I try to do within this episode is to move the property to a side for a second and really focus on Stephanie as the incredible lady that she is. So if you want to find out more about her property journey after this episode, again, the links will always be in the show notes. But more importantly, this episode focuses on somebody who has literally chased her dreams across the whole of UK. She's been through ups and downs just to try and make her life better, not just for herself, but also for her son, Alex. And what you're also going to see is a lady who didn't have all the answers when she first started, and through learning and failing and experience, she started to develop this resilient mindset, which has now seen her create a business earning hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds, which is absolutely fantastic to see. But you're also going to see vulnerability, and it's actually the first guest who's ever shed a tear. And it was during a moment that you may not necessarily expect, especially given some of the adversities and the stories that we've had on this show today. Stephanie got emotional during one particular period, and in hindsight, when I really reflected back on it, I fully understand why. And I felt goosebumps, not just in that moment, but in hindsight afterwards. You see, we speak a little bit about someone just caring, somebody who isn't affiliated to us, so it's not a friend or a family, someone external, but just showing the ability to care for someone. And we touched on this briefly within this episode, that wouldn't the world just be a much, much better place if we could all just extend our arms and just try and help people and just try and care for people and show a bit of compassion, rather than being so self-centered and so self-consumed in this kind of world that we're all trying to just get by in. Because at the end of the day, we all want happiness. We all want happiness 24/7, and we all want to be free from pain. And I think if we have those thoughts in the back of our head when we start the day, we can hopefully live in such a positive manner that Stephanie is now trying to portray not only to her coaching clients, but to the world herself as she starts to now find her voice. Wouldn't the world just be just so much better? So once again, guys, I want to thank you all so much for your support. It's been absolutely incredible. The reviews have been flying in. We are now in the charts for mental health as well. And I do urge you, just take a few moments, please, just to try and leave us a review. Try and share this with a friend. Any of the other stories, this story is incredible. You're really going to enjoy it. I am going to stop rambling any second now. But thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Now, without further ado, let's get this show on the way. Okay, thank you for tuning in. Today I have Stephanie on the show, and this is actually the third time now I am trying to do this introduction. I have been showing my vulnerabilities in terms of making mistakes, as I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of in this episode. So Stephanie has kindly come on to share her story. I have to apologize in advance because I was getting engrossed in a story she was telling me, and then something happened with the actual recording, which is just part and parcel of this podcast. But as with life, we persevere and we've got to carry on. So Stephanie, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Aren. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Bless you. And thank you again, because I'm going to have to ask you literally the same question I asked you a few moments ago, which is I want you to tell the listeners about yourself, and I want you to kind of give us a flavour of who you are and how you've kind of come about to where you are today. I mean, I know a little bit about you. I've had a couple of discussions offline, but I'm really interested for you to connect with the audience, and a little bit of that story that you told me just before the recording all played up was really interesting. So if you could just maybe start from the beginning and then just kind of fill us in.
Yeah, I'm going to start from the bit that I'm comfortable with, Aren, and
Absolutely.
then go into the bit that I'm not so comfortable with. So I came across you on Facebook, as you said, and somebody we both know, Donna Marie Pegg, who's been on the show and who's an absolute inspiration in terms of everything that she's achieved, both in property and outside of property. And so when she recommended me to listen to your podcast, I thought it was going to be about property. And I was really blown away because Donna's story made me think about things in my past which I don't think about very often. And in the last 3 years, I've gone into property and my life has changed a lot. I've grown so much and my circumstances have changed so much. But what it makes me think about is how did I get from where I was as a young girl, 19, when I got pregnant with my son Alex, and as a single mum, and also the reasons for being in that relationship that I was in at the time, and so on. The where I was and my place in the world, to somebody who later on could start a business that has now become, reasonably successful, turning over £400,000 a year and with contracts just under £2 million every 5 years. And it's just, how do you go from one to the other? And even in 2013 and 14, because life is not a straight line, I was having a very low ebb, and I was working in a just above minimum wage job, and I was really unsure of myself and not sure whether I would be able to perform in that kind of job. Even though I had 3 degrees and experience of running my own business in the past. So I hope that gives a little flavour of who I am, and we can maybe dig into some more bits of it as we chat on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just said some stuff there that I never knew about you. So you've came from being a single parent at 18 to your son Alex, and then from working minimum wage to now having this established, very successful, in terms of £400,000 you generate in a year.
Let me just say a little bit about the property. I know that that's not where we're going to be focusing, but just so that your listeners can understand. So when I started the business 3 years ago with my sister, we weren't going into it with a huge amount of money, but that's another thing, that you can start a successful property business and then eventually move on to buying your own properties and creating wealth with only a little bit of money to start. And that was the strategy, or one of the strategies we used for that is called rent to rent, where you rent your properties for 3 to 5 years, you agree a guaranteed rent with the landlords, and you rent them out for more money. And everybody knows what's happening within that relationship, and everybody is happy with it. And by doing an exceptional job for the landlords and for your tenants, you can then make money in between. And from that cash flow, we've then been able to buy our own properties as well, worth over £1 million. So that's really been transformative. But I think what attracted me to your podcast is the space to talk about other things that even my good friends who've known me for years in actual person won't know about, because I don't even talk about them actually to myself very often.
And that's kind of what I want to do as well. So it's funny how you mentioned that you assumed that I would be doing a property podcast, because a lot of people on social media assume me as the property guy, because obviously like yourself, I invest in property as well. But property's never really been my passion, and it's never really been the thing that gets me out of bed. Things like this, like having a deep connection with someone, having that conversation with someone, or really seeing how people transform their lives, or how some people are dealt certain cards and some people are dealt maybe better cards, but why the person who's dealt maybe the worst cards does better. And I always find that fascinating, and I always believe that sometimes the best people in the world are those people who have had to suffer with some level of adversity. And like many of my listeners, a bit like myself, a bit like you, adversity has kicked me in the ass like over and over and over, but every single time that it does, I do come back stronger, I do come back more resilient. So I always want to dive into the mind of somebody and then try and give the listener some value from that. And on your brief introduction there, you mentioned something from having a minimum wage job to now creating a fantastic business within the space of 3 years. And I want to ask you a question is, what changed then? What could you tell our listeners that you had to do yourself, whether it's a personal development thing, whether it was a coaching thing or a learning thing, for you to think, hold on, this isn't enough for me. This isn't enough for me and my son. I'm now going to go change the game. What was that turning point?
It's when I reflect back on it, it's finding it within yourself to believe that it's possible. Really, you have to be able to switch to, yes, I can do this. But sometimes that's such a huge leap from not being able to do basic things to being able to see yourself as successful. It just seems too far of a stretch. But if you can just say to yourself, okay, other people are doing this, this is possible for me, and that can help you to take the actions you need to take to have the little victories that are going to take you on your steps to the bigger victories. And if I just should I say why I think that I had reached that sort of low point?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I'll just recap a little bit because I had my son, and I had been at college at the time, and so I hadn't completed my A levels, and so I was pregnant with him, and then I wanted to work. I had it in my head that I needed to work and I shouldn't be on benefits. And so when he was born, I then went out to work, but I was on a low paid job because obviously I didn't have any qualifications and I was quite young. And what I found was it wasn't working out because the pay was quite low and the childcare was quite expensive. And also I was missing my baby, he was missing me. And so I decided then to stay at home, be on benefits, and do university, and through the Open University. It wasn't even online in those days. It was all delivered in the mail. It was all delivered in the post, and then they had these summer schools where you would go along. So I did that for 3 years, and then when Alex went to school, I then went to university full time, and I got a year off. I was doing a 4-year sandwich degree, and I've actually heard you say that you were a social worker.
Absolutely, yeah, I was.
Yeah, and this was a 4-year sandwich degree course where you had a year on a social work placement, and you also got your social work diploma as well as your bachelor's in sociology. So I was doing this at our local polytechnic, and Alex was at school. And then eventually I graduated with a first.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. And I then went on to be working part-time at the university, doing research and also doing filling in for lecturers, so doing some lecturing. And I had another part-time job as a tutor, and I was doing little bits and pieces like that, fitting in with Alex. And eventually on from there, it's quite a long story, so I'll just condense
please carry
it down.
on. It's fine.
Oh, right. So I got another degree at Birmingham University then in international relations, and I really got so much out of it. But I just explain all that to give you a little bit of insight so that you can see obviously that I had something to offer. And I then went on to do some professional jobs. But in 2013-14, what had happened was I had been working for a while, and I had reached what I thought was a fantastic job, and it was there's so much to the story because we were living in Birmingham. I'm skipping about. We were living in Birmingham at this point. And after I did my master's degree, it really felt that Birmingham was I was in a rut in Birmingham, or where I was in Birmingham, the people I knew, I was in a rut in Birmingham, and I felt I wanted to move. And also I felt that Alex would have a better experience growing up in a different place. And so I was looking around the UK as to where we could move to, and over a quite a convoluted story, which we may be able to come back to, which I won't go into now, we moved to Edinburgh when Alex was 9, and that was a brilliant experience in so many different ways, and I think Alex loved growing up there. I can't remember where I was going to, but I needed to be in Edinburgh to carry on with the rest of the story.
It's fine.
What was the question?
It's fine. You were just giving obviously a backstory in relation to a little bit about yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So when we got to Edinburgh, the convoluted story was that I had applied for some jobs in Edinburgh because I'd had this light bulb in Birmingham. Actually, you could just move to the place, and get a job the similar like you're doing in Birmingham. It doesn't have to be a big deal. So I had applied for a job in Birmingham, and it was as a research fellow on a university research project. And this was pushing it a little bit, I thought, because I had done some research and I had done some lectureships, but I was still relatively a novice at all this, and so I was amazed to get an interview, and so I went to Edinburgh on the train and went to the interview, and it was overwhelming but exciting, and overall a really positive experience. And there were 5 people. It was behind one of those big tables with a chair in the middle and 2 either side, and I was sitting at a little tiny desk in front, just sort of. But I got into my flow, and I thought I did the best I could with what I had. And they seemed really interested and really taken. And the chair was asking me, where will you be later on? Because, that was the days. Was this the year? It was probably around 1999.
Mm-hmm.
And the chair was asking me, where am I going to be afterwards? Because it was before most people didn't have a mobile phone at that time. And so he wanted to know which number I was going to be on. And I thought, oh my God, they want to call me. So I went off, and obviously I was on a high, and I'd had a great experience in Edinburgh. It was blossom-filled trees across the meadows, and it was a glorious day in May, and I just enjoyed wandering around the city. And I'd stayed overnight, and I took the train back to Birmingham, and I was just in a state of high excitement. And I got back home, and I was thrilled to see Alex, obviously, and I couldn't wait to get to my answering machine because I was convinced that there were going to be a message, but no calls.
Right.
And so I waited, and I realised eventually, obviously, that there's not going to be a call. And about 10 days later, a letter came through the post, and it was the most beautiful letter. It was about 1.5 pages long, and it was so beautifully written with such care. And he had said that I'm crying just thinking about how much he really cared. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Take your time.
It just really touched me. But anyway, this is not even the sad this is not even the sad part of the story. This is a happy part. But he said that they were so impressed by me, and not only that, he went into the reasons of why they were impressed, and they thought I would be good for this role, and actually I would also be good for other roles in international bodies, and they suggested some of those could have been. And they also said that they'd taken on somebody who was a research student there already, and she had done her PhD with them, and it just seemed like the natural choice to take this person. But would I be interested in doing a PhD at the university? And I had said, obviously I was over the moon. I don't think I cried.
Oh, bless you.
But I was over the moon. But what touches me now is, reflecting back, is the care. Just a minute.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, what touches me now is the care that these people took for someone, they didn't know. But anyway, so a year after that, I was starting to think to myself, it takes me a long time.
Oh, bless you.
I don't need to be going for a specific job like that. That would be an ideal job for me. I could just go for an everyday job. And an email came through. And sometimes emails from the past pop up. And I thought, oh gosh, here's an email from a year ago that's just popped into my inbox. And then I realised, no, it's now. It's now. They're writing to me now. Oh my gosh, Edinburgh University are writing to me again. And now they had some funding for master's degrees. And they're funding for master's degrees with this same research council, but the university gets to choose who they want to give them to.
Okay.
So they were offering me, would I like to go and do one of these master's degrees, and with the funding, to pay my tuition and a bit of living costs. And obviously, I was delighted and ecstatic. And it was another sort of twisting tale, because what happened then was that the Research Council had changed their rules the previous year to say if you already had a master's degree, which I did, you were not eligible for this funding. But again, the university, and in particular Professor Mike Adler, had written to the principal explaining this long story and asking whether the university would consider paying my tuition fees. And so they said yes, they would pay the tuition fees. And so I then only needed to meet my living expenses, and I got a little job at the Mature Student Support Office, which is on the same campus, so it was perfect. And we moved, and it was fantastic. And when I got there, I did this master's degree. I had the opportunity to do a PhD, and which I decided against. And I got an amazing job at the Scottish Government, it's now called, but at the time it was the Scottish Executive. And it's coming down from there to where we're about to talk to. That's why I've had to sort of build the story
That's brilliant.
up to where it's come down to, because if it's kind of, even I can't believe how could you come down from there so far. But what happened over the next 7 years is I totally burnt myself out, and I realize now that what I didn't know about mindset. I didn't know about how to master your mindset, how to systemize your business, how to outsource and develop your business beyond yourself. And also, I didn't know that there are people who've done everything. There's no unique problems, that the solution to my problem is easily available and out there. It's not something I have to struggle to work out, and if I don't know the answer, it's not knowable. So I burnt myself out by doing everything myself, and not growing or scaling in the way that I needed to be able to do. So that's the backdrop. So I'm in this position now where 7 years later, I've decided to give up that business, and sold it on to one of the other members of the club, and just not work. And I was so relieved. And for a couple of months, I didn't do anything. But then I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do next? I didn't feel I could go back to the professional careers that I'd had before. And I just thought, I just need to do something. What about, I'll do some just temporary work, just some temping admin work, and get back into, working, and take it from there. But I was at such a low ebb. Didn't realize it at the time, that I was really unsure about the work, and I had really got myself into a situation where I was doing something really mundane, such as it was a receptionist at a car showroom, very swanky cars, and hardly anyone came in. It's not a high volume traffic area, so it was a boring. Some reception jobs can be interesting, but for me anyway, that's not my mission vision. But the thing that happened that brought things to a head and that made me realize that I'm off the boil is that a job became available, a full-time job became available at this receptionist place, and I applied for it. And the job was very low paid. And I didn't even know the pay when I applied for it. And I didn't get it. And I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. I just thought I was totally worthless, and that I couldn't even get this particular kind of a job. And what was I going to do? Because now nobody wants me, and I can't do anything, and I'm totally worthless. And I met the lady who got the job because I needed to show her what to do. And I kind of understood at some level then why I didn't get the job, because she was so over the moon to have this job. And you could see that the job was going to be her whole life. And looking back on it now, I think that the person who was interviewing just knows that job's not the right job for me. It was the right job for her, but it's not the right job for me. But I was locked in that scenario for a little while, you know. I didn't come straight out of it after that. And I did get out of it. And I got out of it by just recognizing that more was possible for me because for all of us, all of our skills and abilities are inside us. Everything that we need to be successful is already inside us. So it was inside me when I was going for low paid jobs, and it's inside me now when I'm running a successful business. And the only difference is, do I think it's possible for me or not? Do I believe in myself or not? And if I believe in myself, then I'm taking the actions that I need to take to make it happen for me. And if I don't believe in myself, then I'm not. And that is the simple switch that it can be really hard to make.
I think that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to, I've got so many things I want to talk about actually in relation to your story. So bear with me. There's going to be quite a few questions if you don't mind. But just that last bit that you just said really resonated with me because it's probably something that I can resonate with right now in my life. So you said everything is already within us in order to achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve. Mm-hmm. And that clicked with me actually, funnily enough, last week. So I'm in the process, again, similar to yourself, property is my kind of bread and butter. It provides my income basically. And I'm either going to make a hell of a lot of money this year, more than I've ever made, and massively increase my portfolio, or we're also waiting for surveys and valuations and all of that stuff I'm not going to get into for this podcast that might just fall through. However, I'm still the same person and I've still come this far. But there used to be a previous me, and hopefully this makes a bit of sense, where if that deal falls through, my whole self-worth would be attached to me failing or that deal not coming through. Whereas now I'm got the mindset where whether that comes or not, I'm still the same person. I've still grown how much I have. Because what I want people to do is not attach their self-worth on a result or having to achieve something, i.e. a piece of paper or grading, for example, because sometimes it's not always that black and white. And that's what I learned about myself, because I used to kick myself when I used to get deals falling through or not making enough profit, for example. And now it's about enjoying the process as well. And I've learned that so much, and it's about growing as an individual. And you said some beautiful things in this, but at the same time, prior to us starting this, you mentioned that you wanted to discuss your vulnerabilities. So I acknowledge you for doing that, and thank you for sharing that thing when you mentioned the letter and how just when somebody takes so much care in you, look how much impact that has had on your life up until now. We're having this discussion years on, and that has still had such a profound effect on your life, which I think is beautiful. And I think that's a message that we should all try and take care of each other and ourselves. But then there's also a vulnerability that's quite evident. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you here, by the way, but I suffer with it myself, where there's a self-worth and a self-belief element that I feel somewhere along your journey that it dips for you. Like, yes, you're achieving incredible things, but then at the same time, you're also kind of negating yourself or your own ability. And the one thing I touched on, forgive me if I've completely gone off tangent, but you said something when you started the story and you were like, oh, actually, I'll just shorten it. It's not that important. And the reason I want to pick up on that is because when I think I was 21 at the time, I was working as a project manager for an engineering firm. And they do an icebreaker. So, you know, when you have an icebreaker and you introduce the person next to you and you say something interesting. The person next to me asked me to say something interesting about myself. And I was like, there's nothing interesting about me. Don't worry. I won't take up nobody's time. And it kind of went around the room. And then the guy at that time, he was a bit of a mentor to me. And I'll always remember him because it had a massive effect on me in my life. He pulled me to the side that afternoon and he just says, never say like, oh, I'll shorten my story, or it's irrelevant, or it's not important. And I was like, yeah, but you know, there's nothing special about me. There's no point. Let's listen to other people. And he's like, no, that's not how the world works. And then he said something, and it always just stuck in my mind. And he was like, if you don't blow your own trumpet in this world, nobody else is going to do it for you. And I'm not here to say, you know, we should all just be talking about how wonderful we are, but we should also all be here and acknowledge how beautiful and how special we are as well. And our gifts, and whether that is a vulnerability, whether that is anxiety, or whether that is shyness, we should definitely encourage that. And I know you touched on it, that you now have started doing this with the people that you coach, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I've done personal training for 8 years, and the first thing I say to all of my clients is, listen, I was fat. I couldn't walk up 6 stairs without gasping for air. I had a binge eating disorder. I've had all of the things that you've gone through. So I've been there. And the moment you say that, you see somebody then look at you in a completely different light. And it's beautiful because then, like you said it, and it's your words, because they were beautiful words that you said prior to us starting this, you make the impossible seem possible. So I just think it's beautiful. I know you felt like you were all over the place, but I was with you on your journey, following it around, and it's nice to get that, because I do feel that you have you've achieved incredible success. But I do, as I'm going through this journey of the podcast and I'm meeting incredible people across the world who are teaching me a lot about myself, I think the number one thing we have to do is really start to enjoy ourselves and love ourselves as much as we love others. For example, like, I'm sure Alex is probably the number one most important person in the world to you, but is it wrong that you could be number one as well, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I was listening to that and I thought, oh my gosh, I think some people would be. I think it's true what you're saying in, you do, well, I do then edit myself and censor myself, but I have been much better at putting myself forward because, in business, you have to put yourself forward. You have to let people know what you do. If you think you offer a great service and that one that can help people, then you need to put it out there. And I'm the marketing arm of our business, and I found it hard at the beginning, but I think that, and sometimes I still find it hard, but I think people would be surprised or incredulous to hear that, because it seems like I'm always putting myself out there, and I am, because I recognise how important it is now, and why I sort of came across you is because I have been going on more podcasts and talking about, but not talking about what we've been talking about, talking about the other side of it, and the sides where uncomfortable. But I think it is important for other people to get comfortable with sharing what they do and what they offer, because when people come into the course, one of the things that holds them back is that, yes, you need to talk to landlords, yes, you need to talk to agents, but you also need to tell everybody within your own network what you do, and you need to believe it as well. so that's so important. So we get them to practice saying it, and it's an important skill to be able to be authentic to who you are, and also be able to say what you do.
Absolutely. I think that's a great lesson. And I encourage people as well after this. So obviously my podcast isn't property, but to follow, if you are interested in learning about property, to obviously follow Stephanie's story and maybe liaise with her about the services that she offers. Because one thing I've noticed myself, and maybe you may have been guilty of this yourself previously, I probably leave a lot of money, I suppose, on the table, because I don't necessarily sell my services. I've never sold, for example, personal training services or coaching services. Everything's always been kind of word of mouth. But something I've realized recently is that it's the people who are most known that generally get most business. For example, HSBC Bank, the biggest building in London, will probably get the most attraction for people looking for a bank account. Is that necessarily the best bank account? It's debatable. There's probably better ones out there. So sometimes it's not always the best people or the most liked people or the nicest, genuine people who will get all of the business. So there almost comes a point where we have to put ourselves out there. I know you've had the anxiety stuff. I've massively suffered with it. Yet people think, oh, but you've got a YouTube channel. And I'm like, you have not seen that a 3-minute clip on YouTube takes me 6 hours to do, because I'm messing up my words, as I messed up the intro for this before we started 3 times. I have to edit everything out, but then I still put it out there just in the hope that somebody sees a shy kid with a funny little accent putting himself out there, and then hopefully it sparks them to say, you know what, I've got a message, I want to share it. And that's pretty much why I do Find Your Voice. And I think it's brilliant that you're now putting yourself out there. I think you've got a great message. I think this will obviously hit your clients and the people that come into you to get to know you a little bit more as well, because people do buy into people. So one, yes, it's fantastic, you're going to get known you're already known within the industry, because I knew who you were. But 2, when you know a person and you know their vulnerabilities and they seem human, rather than this fake social media perspective where everyone's just happy 24/7. It's not the case. And it's brilliant hearing someone who's creating hundreds of thousands of pounds a year of income saying, actually, I'm still working on myself. I think that's beautiful. So honestly, I acknowledge you for sharing that. So thank you for that. And on that basis, then I just want to ask now. So I'm going to call you successful because you're very successful in everything that you're doing, and you're learning, and that's the beautiful thing about it. But what's a day like for you? What's your daily routine like? Because I always want to give my listeners some insight into what successful people are doing on a daily basis.
Okay, so it's a bit of a mix, and I'm going to tell you a few of the things that I am doing and how I would like my mornings to be. Okay,
yeah.
Because I for a little while I had this lovely morning routine where I had an app called Calm, and so I would meditate for a few minutes, and then do some exercise, and then come back and go in my, I've got a sauna at home, a little far infrared sauna in my bedroom, which I'm just so thrilled to have. It's about the size of a big wardrobe. It's quite a small bedroom, so I didn't think it would work.
Yeah.
but it does. So that feels a bit luxurious. And then really it varies after that. And the morning doesn't always go like that, but that's my ideal morning routine. And at the moment, I'm on a juice and soup thing for 28 days. And I'm just coming up to the end of it because I've had a period. Health is my number one value, because it's so easy for me to go into a state of unhealthiness, and that really makes me unproductive in all the other areas of my life. So I make that my number one priority. And I really have let it slide in the weeks previous. So I'm now, I think I'm at about day 23 or something of this 28 days of the juice. So I then go into the juice, and I'm a morning person. So I do my creative work in the morning, and then I set up the afternoon to be able to do anything where I need to be meeting with other people. So that part of the day can vary quite a lot. Sometimes I'm speaking in the evenings, and we have our live online coaching calls for the people who are working with us, which is obviously, it gives me so much joy going through those, because the major transformations are really the ones that take place in the mind that help us to take the actions that we're taking, or that we need to take, simple actions that we need to take, but just making us take them.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. Thank you. So there's some definitely great insights there for people that want to, I suppose, level up. And I think health, so you call it health, I call it myself. So I always have like the top 3 priorities that I always try and live my life towards, and one of them is myself, and within that obviously falls health, because without your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, or spiritual, or however many you see, we have to focus on that, because without that we can't, one, obviously move forward in terms of business and life, but two, we can't also help other people as well. So I think that's fantastic, and it's something that is very common amongst almost everyone, I suppose, that I've interviewed. So thank you for sharing that. And now let's go back, if we may, then to a time of adversity for yourself. So you've obviously been up and down a fair bit, and you've had your fair share of, I'd say, interesting journeys and different careers and stuff. But if you could just think of maybe one specific time of adversity where in that moment maybe you were thinking, oh my God, this is actually the end of the world, but then in hindsight, having persevered through it, you've realized actually that was brilliant. And could you just maybe give us a lesson or two maybe from that?
Yeah, I think there are so many like this. Even when you become, in quotes, successful, there are so many challenges, and in fact there are more challenges. The more successful you become, the more challenges you have, because when you're living in your comfort zone, maybe you're in a job you don't enjoy, but you go there and it's somebody else's rules, and you come in and you watch telly or whatever, and your life is just going past you. There are very few challenges in that, actually. When you start up leveling and putting yourself out there and trying to change the game for yourself and trying to be a better person and get better results, then that's when the failing really, really starts to ramp up. And So I think that the biggest challenges, or at least the challenges that are coming to mind right now, are the recent challenges and the challenges of when we first started this and going into it with having failures to look back on, and you're not looking back from having that consistent success, and you're not looking back from a position of previously being able to make things work. I think sometimes one of the powerful things that I've learned in the last few years is we have to ask ourselves better questions. And the better questions are, we've now signed this contract with somebody for 3 years, for example. And so the question is, how can we make this work?
Yes.
How could this work? What would I need to know to make this work? Who could help me make this work? There's always information and people who have made this thing work and who could help you to know how to make it work. And when you ask those better questions, you get better answers, because your subconscious mind is so powerful. When you go to bed asking yourself questions, I often find asking yourselves good questions. I often find that the answers come to me in the morning. I have to sleep with a pen by the bed because your subconscious mind knows everything that you know, but are not conscious of. And it's working for you and coming up with the answers. So I think I encourage people to tap into that resort, tap into the knowledge that there are other people who can help you get past your problems, and tap into the power of your subconscious mind by asking the right questions.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant bit of guidance there, to ask yourself the right questions. And again, it all comes down to your subconscious. So if somebody's actually looking for solutions, then your subconscious will indirectly either show you things in the world, or show you opportunities, or show you people that can help you with those solutions. Whereas if you're kind of, I suppose, and I've been there, where I've spent so much of my time focusing on the actual problem, and my anxiety's gone through the roof. I'm stressed at my eyeballs, and you can't see clearly. You're not thinking with logic, you're thinking with emotion, and it's an absolute nightmare. And I've been there, especially with properties. But I bet you now, if that same situation or scenario happened tomorrow, you'd be in such a much better place. One, from obviously your learning, but two, from your ability to handle it.
Yeah. And one thing I heard is that, and I like this way of thinking, is that when you first start out in a new area, you can only handle level 1 or 2 problems. In fact, level 1 or 2 problems are probably going to send you into a tailspin. Oh my gosh. I can't think of a level 1 or 2 problems, but things send you into a tailspin. But once you have solved level 1 and 2 problems, you found out how to do it, you found out that there was a system online that you could look to, or there was a person who helped you with it, then you're facing level 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and gradually the level of problems that you experience gets bigger. So, for example, us running our business now, we're experiencing different problems than we have ever experienced previously. But we know that there are people out there who can help us solve those problems, because there are people running multi-million pound property businesses and $10 million property and $100 million property who've got much bigger problems, and they're equipped to deal with those problems at those levels. So we need to equip ourselves to deal with those bigger problems that are going to come to us at each level of our growth, personally and in business. And knowing that really gives me confidence, because it means that I can grow enough to match up to the level of problems that are being presented to me, and I won't get the next level of problem until I can master the current level. Like, I won't have the problem of a million-dollar business until I can master the problems of having a $500,000 pound business.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant answer, and it makes so much sense in terms of how you just said with the level 1s and 2s, because again, I can resonate with it. I'm sure anyone who's gone through any change or any level of growth in their life can as well. And just on that then, so having this level of confidence right now in your life today, what's your biggest fear?
What's my biggest fear? I think the biggest fear is looking back and feeling that I did not make the most of my potential. So when I talked about the time when I was going for the minimum wage jobs and not thinking that I was good enough for them, I really believe that at the time, and I didn't realize that there was anything wrong with that way of thinking until I reflect back. So I have to challenge myself now to challenge myself in my thinking. Am I thinking big enough? Am I growing? Am I pushing myself? Do I feel afraid? If I don't feel afraid in some area of my business, or anxious or slightly concerned, I feel I'm not growing. And for me at the moment, it's very important to growth. So what I'm afraid of is not growing and then looking back and feeling that I didn't make the most of the potential to not just to grow the business, which is important, but also to the impact that we'll be able to have when we have that success, the impact on other people.
That's it's interesting you said that, and I want to ask you just a spin-off question off that then. So again, similar to yourself and probably a lot of people hopefully that listening to this, we're on a almost a personal development journey where we're always trying to grow, we're always trying to be progressing whatever we're doing. Do you feel that the answer in terms of maxing out your potential has become more of a recent kind of fear in terms of not being able to max it out, or was it something that you've always thought? Because if I think back to when I was a university student, my biggest fear was probably, I don't know, not having enough money to go drinking on the weekend, for example. That's something very trivial. And then as I start to level up, and then I reflect back and I look at where I was 6 months ago, or I look at where I was even 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, okay, you've improved 1% here or 2% here. And then I get really excited because I'm like, how much better will I be in 6 years time or in 16 years time? And I get excited by almost like the long game. And then I have the exact kind of same answer that you just said, which is why I find it interesting, is I think it'd be a disservice to the world if I can inspire one person with this episode. It would be a shame that I don't max that out and try and inspire 1 million people instead. And you've kind of touched on that. Do you think that's been a recent kind of fear of yours, or have you always had that?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a recent thing because my fears before were much more personal, and much more basic. There were times when I didn't have enough money, to do the basic things that I wanted to do, and I would have to sort of have one of these lists where it's £12.42 is going to be for this, and £16.47 is going to be for that, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do about that? So in those days, my fears were very basic, but I would just love to go back to that girl and say, but you can achieve so much more. It's all within you. If my mind had been focused on, maybe how could I earn more money in a different way, not as a job. How could I, what skills do I have that I could offer to people? If I had seen more value in myself, and I just feel that it's not a waste because everything that you have has brought you to the perfect point.
Of course.
But I do wish that I had got all this sooner, and that's why
absolutely.
one of my passions is to share that with other people, to be the catalyst for other people, to help them see. So maybe there's somebody who's in that similar situation to I was, and they hear this and they think, I could do something, because what's often the problem for us all is not resources, it's resourcefulness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we haven't got the resources, but if we had the resourcefulness, we could get the resources, because we live in one of the richest countries in the world.
Absolutely.
And almost everyone who's in a position to listen to this could, if they put their mind to it. For example, if they think they've got no money and they're completely broke, they could raise £500 within a month. Nearly everyone can do that. And then when you think up from there, what value can I give to people that they would exchange for money? That's one of the questions to start asking. How can you improve the value that you can offer to people so that you could earn more money if that's something that you want to do?
Absolutely. No, that's, again, this is brilliant. I'm standing here now, and I had goosebumps when you were saying that, because I'm resonating with the bit where you're saying yes, you appreciate like none of the lessons and the trials that you've been through in life were a waste, because it's obviously brought you to where you are now. But my God, wouldn't it have been more fun if we had it earlier? But at the same time, I love the thing about you, and it's something that I've always tried to do, is knowing what I know now. I don't want people, so I use my younger brother as an example. He's 9 years younger than me. The first thing I want him to do is have everything that I have right now, right where he is now. I don't want him to be 9 years older and then almost trying to find his voice and find his way in life. I want him to have it now. So I'm banging on at him almost on a daily basis. Like, you have to read this. You have to understand this. You have to get rid of all these limiting beliefs that you've seen me grow up with, or what so-and-so has said to you. You can do it. And I suppose it is difficult, especially when you've grown up and you've not really had role models who have maybe gone those extra few lengths. So the only inspiring people we ever saw were on the TV or on YouTube, for example. So I'm trying to break that mold, and I'm really hoping that the mold is going to be broken very, very soon, just to kind of inspire them, my younger brothers and sisters, even more so, to think, hold on, if they can do it, then it becomes a little bit more believable. But I definitely share your passion, and it's literally why I do what I do. If you look at almost 99% of my posts, it's just trying to give people tips so they don't make the same mistakes as me, because I couldn't give a damn if they get there 10 years before me. In fact, I'll be so much happier, because all I've got from these 10 years of stress is just grey hair for no reason. And I could do without, because I just about managed to grow a beard, and now it's turning grey. But yeah, I love that enthusiasm and just that compassion from you, that you want to do that. And I think that's beautiful. And you also somehow managed to fit in a question I was going to ask you. So I want to kind of rewind and maybe just get a little bit more into it. Is, you said, if I could speak to that little girl again, and then you mentioned something that she can achieve so much more. There's so much more in her.
Yeah.
What else would you say? Or could you just elaborate maybe a little bit on that? Because that is one of the questions I always ask after the fun part of the show, which is coming up next.
Yeah. What would I say? I think I would say it's possible for you, because when you're in that place, and sometimes you don't even realize you're in a low place, because that just is your mindset. You're not aware necessarily that there are other mindsets that are available to you. So I would just encourage to say it's possible for you. The things you dream of, it's possible for you. I want you to get to. I want everyone to get to yes, you can. Yes, you can. But to start off with, yes, you can, or yes, I can do something that seems so much bigger than where you are, it feels like a lie. And this is something that Les Brown says, and I listen to his videos, and he gets me fired up in the mornings. That's the other thing I didn't mention in my daily. Whenever I'm in the mornings, I have the videos on while I'm showering and all that. And whenever I get in the car, I'm on the podcasts, and that's made such a huge difference in my life, because some of these concepts that I'm sharing with you, they're just things I've heard over the last few years of watching the videos and listening to the podcasts, and podcasts like yours that are about how to grow your mind, how to be a better person, how to live life with a higher level of joy. And I'm not sure that I've answered your question, but
No, you have, absolutely. I was actually having a conversation, going off on a tangent here, with a friend yesterday, and one of the things he wants to do is go back into schools and kind of teach him the stuff he's learned post-school, i.e. the mindset stuff, the stuff that you and I are now learning about growth mindset, because we're seeing influencers, we're seeing Les Brown. Now, Les Brown, for me, he's one of my favourites, in terms of, I read his book, and it was on that day I quit social work, and I just turned off the engine and just jumped out of that plane and thought, I'm going to go into property. And he kind of had this thing about him. I loved it, and that really drove me. So I get all of that, and a lot of the stuff I probably say is, the messages are simple that are out there. It's just people have a different way of saying them, and I just try and say them in a way that's more relatable to people. I try and not just show you the good side, I also try and show you the bad side as well. But your answer is absolutely fine. I think it's something that we could all, in hindsight, think, oh man, I wish I just knew this as a kid, and it would help. And obviously we can't, unfortunately, go back in time, but what we can do is help the younger generation to have that advice.
Yeah, and one other thing I would add to that girl is that is the slight edge message, which is it's the little steps you take nearly every day. It's not about the big leap. You don't need to make a big leap. And the big leap can feel scary and terrifying and unavailable to you. But the little step seems absolutely doable and possible. And just knowing that over time, all those little steps are going to take you to an amazing place. And that little time can be as little as a year, 2 years, 3 years. But what happens is people don't realize the power of those little steps. And they maybe give up after a week, a month, or a few months, and they don't get to reap the rewards of a year, 2 years, and 3 years. And 5 years, the what you can do within 5 years is phenomenal. Because if you think about this property experience that we're on, we are 3 years in, so we've still got 2 years to go, and the last 2 years of this 5 year period are going to be so much more powerful than the first 3 years. So everything that we've already achieved is going to more than double within the next 2 years. And so when we are talking about a 5 year period, that's a period of your life that actually goes by quite quickly. But if you just take the small steps and think, okay, this isn't just a 1 minute plan. This is a 3 to 5 year plan. That these changes are insignificant today, but within the context of a year, 3 years, 5 years, this little step's going to make a massive difference.
Absolutely. I think Darren Hardy says it in The Compound Effect as well. And
Yeah.
I've recently listened to a book, well, it's a classic, I've listened to it before, by Dale Carnegie, on how to stop worrying and start living. Mm-hmm. And he mentions something in there, which is living in daytime compartments. So it's just about doing whatever you can in that particular day, and not really getting yourself overwhelmed with the whole grand scheme of things, which is easily done. Especially like with social media, we feel we should be here, or we're seeing everyone almost doing amazing all the time, and we almost sometimes compare ourselves to other success, whereas it is those little steps every single day that make it happen. And I always use the fitness analogy because it's something I'm comfortable with. It's something that I've demonstrated from going from a fat person to getting into shape. And people always say simple things like, it's easy for you, you must have a fast metabolism, for example, or your genetics are different. But I'm like, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've been doing this for 6 days a week. And even if I've gone for a drink on the weekend, the next day I'm in the gym, like everything I've done, it's a compound effect. I didn't one day just wake up suddenly and have a 6-pack because I decided to do crunches the night before. And I'm trying to instill that in people. Yeah, I know, sadly that just doesn't work. But I suppose we're in a society where everyone wants that instant gratification, and they want the results for their work straight away. It's like they've worked so hard 16 hours a day once or twice. But I'm like, just try that for 3 years and see where you end up. Because it will get easier, and you will get better, and you will skill up. And then sooner or later, if I work 16 hours in 5 years' time, it's going to be a hell of a lot more productive than my 16 hours now. So that's a brilliant message. And on that note, actually, we're going to completely flip the scripts, and we're going to go into the fun part of the show, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with, where I just give you as many questions as I possibly can in 60 to 90 seconds. There are no right or wrong answers, so please do just say as and what you feel like. And whenever you're ready, we're going to get started.
I'm ready.
Okay, fantastic. We'll start in 3, 2, 1. If you could abolish one thing in the world, what would it be?
Fear mindset.
Your favourite hobby?
Hot yoga.
Your biggest role model?
Oprah.
What would you like to be remembered for?
Inspiration.
Your biggest goal this year?
To write a book.
Your worst mistake?
Not starting sooner.
The lesson you learnt from it?
Believe.
If you could relive one day again, what day would it be?
I think it would be the day that I first got the positive mindset. The day that, anyway, this is supposed to be short answers. But
No,
yeah,
it's fine.
The day everything changed. It's a bit of a long story, so I won't go into it in the quick fire.
Okay, I'll let you off for that one. But otherwise, I want to hear your stories. But brilliant, yeah. The ability to fly or be invisible?
Fly.
The number one thing that annoys you?
Myself.
Money or fame?
I think money.
Your proudest moment?
I think my proudest moment is that we started the business, because I don't know, looking back, why I thought that I could.
I'm glad you did.
Thanks.
Your favourite food?
A raw cashew nut.
Would you rather speak all languages or be able to speak to animals?
All languages.
What song best describes your life?
Oh, I love the Labi Siffre song. Something inside so strong.
Love that. And I love your rendition of it as well.
I'm not very good here, but it touches my heart because it makes everything, all my hairs stand up, and it just makes me know and make us all know that we have everything we need inside us, but we shouldn't let anybody else pull us down.
I love that message. And finally, if you had an extra hour a day, how would you spend it?
Learning.
Love it. So sadly, that actually does bring us to the last question of the day, which is about legacy. And I know this is something that's obviously important to yourself because you want to be remembered for someone who inspires people. So if in 150 years time science fails to save us and all that exists is this book, and this book is about you, it's about all of the weird and wonderful things that you've done in life. Firstly, what would the title say? And secondly, what would the blurb at the back tell us about you?
The title would be Yes You Can, and the blurb on the back would say that I inspired lots of people to change their lives for the better and create a life that they love.
I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. And when you say lots of people, have you got a figure in mind?
I thought about that fleetingly, and I don't. I want to touch a lot of people.
Let's make it happen. Let's put it out there in the universe.
We have the power, don't we, through the internet, and it's so incredibly phenomenal. And I'd love to harness that power and move beyond helping people in property to helping people just flick the switch to yes you can.
Absolutely, I love that. And just on the basis of property and obviously everything else that you do, Stephanie, could you please let the listeners know how they can reach out to you following this show?
Yeah, if you're thinking of starting a property and you'd like to think about a way where you don't need a lot of capital to start, a great way to start is to download our free 6-step system, which you can get at renttoRentSuccess.com. And if you got, and also in there you can get free online training and you can book a call with me to talk about it. Or you can contact me on Facebook. I'm Stephanie Taylor, and message me.
Fantastic. And what I will do is take all of those links off Stephanie after this show, and I'll put them in the show notes for all you listeners, so you can literally click the link and it'll directly take you to a page. I do encourage you all to follow her journey. As you've seen, she's not only a successful business person, but she's also a wonderful lady. I want to take this moment just to say thank you to everyone at home for listening, and Stephanie, thank you so much for your time as well today.
Thank you, Aren.
And remember, this podcast is absolutely free. So all we ask in return is for you to share this with a friend and drop us a 5-star review over on iTunes. Have an awesome day.